A team of adventurers is locked in a desperate fight. Their shaman Beza prepares to cast a buff. While the mage Rodish is told to keep up the pressure, the leader Kunan calls for Saki to find an opening. He shouts a warning to someone named Yuki to stay back. Meet Yuki, the F-rank porter, basically the designated snack carrier. With the support roles in place, the assault begins. Kunan binds the dragon, screaming for Saki to attack now, and Saki dives in, her blade glowing with power. Her eyes flare as she prepares to unleash a final skill. Saki unleashes her ultimate skill, Luminous Slash. The dragon is shredded by the flurry of light, and with a final crash, the mighty beast falls. Kunan is in awe of the S-rank's overwhelming power. But this victory is just one battle in a larger war. Uncleared dungeons are going berserk, a growing social problem. To make matters worse, most adventurers only hunt for profit. Only a handful of true heroes lead the charge forward. Speaking of which, our boy Yuki gets a rude awakening. Rodish. The mage barks at him for a healing potion. Rodish continues his tirade, mocking Yuki's weakness. He calls out the kid's low rank and lack of power. But Kunan cuts them off with a sharp glare. He reminds them this is an S-rank dungeon, a place for focus. The mage and shaman fall silent, properly scolded. Kunan then turns to Yuki, telling him to pull his weight. Our boy can only stammer out an agreement. Left alone with his thoughts, Yuki reflects on his carelessness. As the party descends deeper, he realizes his mistake. He was too busy being a fanboy to be a proper adventurer. He reflects on the massive power gap between them, but he still dreams of becoming a great adventurer someday. Saki's voice cuts through his thoughts, a sharp reminder to stay alert. She tells him she doesn't want to lose any more family, a sentiment that Yuki shares completely. His mind flashes back 2 years to a terrible incident. A dungeon outburst had caused a district to collapse, and the tragedy struck their home, an orphanage. He remembers growing up with Saki, both dreaming of adventure. They left to chase that dream, planning to return one day. He remembers the family they left behind, a disaster that took everything from them. He's determined to prevent that from ever happening again, but his resolve is interrupted by a strange presence. A shadowy figure completes some kind of ritual, and suddenly Yuki feels a chill run down his spine. The small creature begins to glow with an ominous light. A massive magic circle erupts beneath their feet. Kunan realizes too late that they've walked into a trap, as a dark power ensnares him completely. The entire party is dragged through a chaotic crimson space. Rodish and Beza demand to know where they've been taken. Kunan orders them into a defensive circle, telling Yuki to prep their escape route. But Saki senses a presence as a strange substance pools on the floor. The crimson liquid bubbles ominously. Kunan watches with a grim expression, and from the depths, a figure begins to emerge. A well-dressed gentleman rises, calling himself a demon king. And suddenly nobody's worried about their paychecks anymore. This is no ordinary boss, but the most feared title in any S-rank dungeon. But the S-rank party doesn't hesitate for a moment. Rodish the mage is first, calling forth a storm of ice. A triple-cast ice javelin barrage hurtles forward. Saki follows up immediately, diving from above. She unleashes her ultimate skill, the Luminous Slash. The two powerful attacks converge on their target. But the Demon King is completely unfazed by the assault. He simply sighs, disappointed in their lack of manners. And as his entourage appears, he calls them ignorant. Suddenly, Rodish is violently thrown to the ground. One of the minions, an elven woman, notes an unexpected guest. Before anyone can react, a cat-like brawler lunges at Kunan. The leader barely manages to block the ferocious kick. Another figure, a boy in a hoodie, watches from the sidelines. The well-dressed gentleman addresses the adventurers with a condescending smirk. He warns them that playtime is over, announcing that the real Demon King is about to arrive. The party is thrown back by the immense pressure of the summoning, and Yuki can only watch in horror. As the true master of this domain finally appears, a pair of crimson eyes snap open. His servants bow in reverence, a full court of demonic attendants, and the true Demon King greets them with a smile. Kunan realizes the overwhelming odds. He desperately searches for any weakness. Yuki knows their party, Golden Time, is about to be annihilated, but he absolutely refuses to let that tragedy happen again. As an adventurer, he knows there's something he must do, and with newfound resolve, he prepares to act. He grips a small, glowing device in his hand and activates a complex sequence of golden gears. He announces the start of a return sequence. A countdown for their escape begins. But instead of retreating, Yuki points his sword forward. Declaring himself the Demon King's opponent, the Demon King just smirks, finding the whole thing adorable. His party shouts for him to stop, warning he'll be left behind. But as they're pulled away, Saki realizes his true intention. The countdown ticks down, sealing his fate. Kunan desperately tries to cancel the escape sequence, but Yuki just gives them a final determined smile. He now stands alone before the Demon King and his court. The gentleman attendant seems almost impressed by the boy's resolve. The cat-like brawler realizes Yuki's gambit. He immediately lunges forward to stop whatever Yuki is planning. Our boy is easily overpowered and pinned to the floor. Meanwhile, the countdown on his device ticks down to 2. He reveals his true plan with a defiant look. He wasn't just buying time for an escape, but for something far more drastic. The countdown hits one as the Demon King looks on. Saki and the others watch in horror as a new light appears. Yuki reveals his true goal, to find a way to win. He crushes a glowing scroll in his hand. The gentleman attendant calls it a splendid decision. And just like that, the escape timer hits 0. A golden light envelops his entire party, pulling Saki away from him against her will. Yuki watches them go with a bittersweet smile. Saki reaches for him, her cries lost in the light. And just like that, Yuki is left alone. The Demon King seems amused by his plan to defeat him, but Yuki confirms it with a defiant smirk. He explains that his powerful party will return for revenge. His only regret is leaving Saki to face the world alone. The Demon King finds this sacrifice absolutely hilarious. He calls the boy's selfless madness magnificent, and then he makes an unexpected offer. Yuki can hardly believe what he's hearing. The Demon King confirms it with a predatory smile. He offers Yuki a chance to join his court and conquer other dungeons. Yuki is floored, asking why monsters would attack their own kind. The Demon King explains it's a defense against human invasions. Yuki counters that humans are the ones under threat. But the Demon King insists they only attack those who enter their home. In fact, he claims his side suffers far more casualties. He reminds Yuki of the dragon his party just slaughtered. To defend his people, he must grow stronger by conquering other dungeons. He declares he won't allow any more of his subordinates to fall. The word tragedies echoes in Yuki's mind. Yuki realizes the Demon King's motivation is just like his own. The king confirms he'd even ally with humans to protect his people. A painful reminder of the family Yuki just sacrificed himself for. So our boy makes a counteroffer, a desperate plea for peace. The Demon King explains his goal isn't conquest, but deterrence. He asks for Yuki's trust, with the alternative being a quick death. A pretty compelling argument as far as threats go. Yuki knows his party might win someday, but at what cost? He can't bear the thought of another tragedy like the one he endured. And with that, our boy makes his decision. He agrees to the Demon King's offer, sealing the pact with a firm handshake. But he makes it clear this isn't for the monsters, but for humanity. The Demon King is pleased, officially naming Yuki their new ally. Yuki questions his own worth, pointing out he doesn't even have a job. The king insists that's exactly why he's so important, revealing that only the jobless can become a monster tamer. The demonic court sneers, ready to make use of their new human tool. But Yuki flips the script, vowing that he'll be the one using them. The king explains that monsters need a tamer to move between dungeons. The king explains the 2 conditions. One must be jobless, and then form a contract. His attendant elaborates that there are 3 ways to forge this pact. The Demon King holds Yuki's hand, mentioning the 3rd and final method. And with a disturbingly sweet smile, he reveals it's simply by force. A violent surge of dark energy erupts from their clasped hands. Yuki cries out as a strange glowing gem forms in his palm. Our boy is definitely starting to regret this whole ally thing. The king confirms their new link, allowing him to see through Yuki's eyes. Yuki realizes he's on a very short leash, with no room for betrayal. But with a new sigil on his hand, he reaffirms his resolve, knowing this was his choice. With a snap of his fingers, the Demon King declares the preparations for conquest complete. Yuki is still confused as he's told he's being sent back to the surface. His instructions are simple: find a dungeon and summon him when the time is right. Yuki questions the vague timing because whenever is a great battle plan, and just like that, he's back at the dungeon entrance with his party. Saki stares in disbelief, tears welling in her eyes. Yuki can only manage a weak, dazed wave. Before he can process anything, she breaks free and leaps into his arms. Overwhelmed with relief, she holds him tight, just glad he's alive. The rest of the party can only watch the emotional reunion. The very next day, Yuki has a new mission. He heads to the Adventurers Guild information desk. The receptionist is shocked by his request to enter a dungeon alone. Yuki knew this would be a problem, but he has no choice. She explains the rise of adventurers who only hunt for profit, a problem that has led to more dangerous dungeon outbursts. Because of this, all dungeons are now under heavy restrictions. She lays out the new guild policies for him, explaining that adventurer rank is now the key to entry. She explains that rank is earned through guild-verified contributions, a policy that makes it nearly impossible for solo players to get approved. She adds that most who try to go alone are just desperate for a lucky break. But Yuki clarifies he's only looking for an F-rank dungeon to train. The receptionist seems to understand his sincerity. She registers him for a place called the Silent Labyrinth. Soon, he stands before the entrance of the beginner-friendly dungeon. A guard unlocks the chain-link fence for him, and with a hint of sarcasm, sends him off to conquer it. Yuki eyes the strict security, which is just a single panic button. Top-notch. As Yuki steps inside, a familiar voice echoes in his thoughts. He realizes the Demon King is speaking directly into his head. The king explains this is Yuki's new skill, a basic for any monster tamer. Our boy realizes he has a passive ability, which is handy but unsettling. The Demon King elaborates on neglected dungeons, places left to rot. He assumes such a place would be a perfect breeding ground for monsters. But if left unchecked, the growing population would cause it to collapse. Yet as Yuki explores, he finds the halls eerily empty. How boring. He finds the silence unnatural, even for a low-rank dungeon. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocks the entire labyrinth. A terrified adventurer screams for his party to run. They're fleeing from a massive green ooze, the dungeon boss. His companion can only stare in disbelief at the giant slime. The Demon King's voice explains the lack of monsters. This one has been cannibalizing its own kind to survive, and just then Yuki appears, pointing them toward an escape route. The three of them sprint down the corridor with the monster in pursuit. But the woman is caught, her strength failing her. She's dragged down into the gelatinous mass, helplessly sinking into the creature's body. Yuki desperately asks the Demon King if summoning him will save her, but the king's voice confirms it would be far too destructive. As the woman sinks deeper, her cries fading into the ooze. But then, a new reckless idea sparks in Yuki's mind. If he can't call for backup, he'll just have to be the backup. He dives headfirst into the gelatinous monster. The Demon King watches on, impressed by the boy's foolish bravery. He knew Yuki was the type to risk his own skin, to save those he believes need protecting. And as he reaches her, he proves the Demon King right. With the sigil on his hand glowing, Yuki decides the right time is now. He unleashes the summoning incantation with all his might. And from the crimson void, a hand reaches out in response. The Demon King's spectral form appears, agreeing to be used by his master. The summoning is complete, a king of demons now at his back. Talk about overkill. But the immense power comes at a steep price for Yuki's body. He feels an agonizing fire burning through him from the inside out. The Demon King warns him to hold on, to not break under the strain. He gathers his energy, noting it's just enough for an enemy of this level. And with a final command, he unleashes a devastating attack. He channels the Demon King's power into a single devastating skill. A chaotic blast of purple energy tears through the dungeon, erasing the ooze. The rescued woman can only stare, realizing this power is terrifying. The adventurers look on at the aftermath, a scene of pure disaster. The man turns to Yuki, his expression a mix of awe and concern. He sees the blood streaming from Yuki's face, realizing the kid is badly hurt. But Yuki can barely hear him, the strain of the summoning taking its toll. He stumbles forward, his body finally reaching its limit. His vision blurs as he struggles to stay standing, and with the last of his strength gone, he collapses to the floor. A few days later, Yuki finds himself in the Endless Abyss dungeon. He looks at his new E-rank card, a promotion he earned while unconscious. He reflects on how the adventurers he saved were the ones who truly saved him. The Demon King appears, asking why he looks so glum. Yuki is confused, saying all he did was call for help. But the king corrects him, saying that was all he could do. He explains that in that moment, Yuki refused to abandon the life before him. And without hesitation, he seized another, more reckless option. The king says that kind of strength is what he admires in his new tamer. Yuki finally accepts the praise and the drink with a newfound resolve. The king notes that nearly dying every time is a bit of a problem. He introduces Elvina, an undead maid, as a safer summoning option. Yuki is a little flustered, commenting on her calm demeanor. She immediately misinterprets this as love at first sight, before clarifying that she's just undead and thus has no heartbeat. With his new companion at his side, Yuki's training is set to begin. He asks if this is really okay, and the king assures him it is. Elvina explains her undead joke is part of being a relatable maid, truly a terrifying ambition. She lays out his first task, level up enough to withstand summoning his lord. And to do that, he'll have to fight his way through legions of monsters. Elvina unleashes a fiery punch, clearing the path ahead. She calmly reports the threat is gone, leaving Yuki in awe of her power. She boasts about her capabilities as a maid, striking a confident pose. Her energetic personality reminds Yuki of someone from his past, a memory of a young Saki, always seeking his praise at the orphanage. The fond recollection is cut short by a series of system notifications, and suddenly, Yuki is overwhelmed by a constant stream of level-ups. First world problems, I guess. Elvina finds his complaints baffling, questioning if it's some kind of mortal humor. He realizes that compared to the Demon King, he can maintain her summon for far longer. She explains that their lord is a special case, requiring immense power to call forth. He recalls that even with all his power, he only summoned the king's fingers. Elvina, on the other hand, is the budget-friendly, mana-efficient model. Yuki can't help but agree, calling her a huge help. The praise seems to land as she hides shyly behind her sign. He realizes it's not just about raw power, but also mana efficiency. Their training complete, they finally arrive at the boss room. As Yuki wonders how to open the heavy doors, Elvina cracks her knuckles. She explains that no matter the time or place, you should always knock before entering a room. With your fist, apparently. And inside, a fiery knight waits for them. The boss of this floor is a knight wielding a flaming sword. Elvina politely steps forward to greet their opponent, asking it to kindly become an offering for their training. The knight responds by raising its blade for a deadly strike. But Yuki senses the immense power and tries to intervene. He realizes that flame is on a completely different level. He leaps forward to protect Elvina from the attack, but the undead maid meets the blow head-on. The sheer force of the impact seems to surprise even her. Yuki catches her as she stumbles, earning a compliment for his quick save. Elvina asks how he recognized the holy fire. Yuki explains it just looked different, and reminded him of the light Saki uses. She finds the danger thrilling, despite her lack of a pulse. But the knight has other plans, unleashing a massive sanctuary of flames. Elvina realizes they're trapped, with no easy way out. The Demon King's voice reminds him he can only maintain one summon, so Yuki decides they'll have to face this together. Elvina is taken aback by his resolve, a tamer fighting beside his monster, but Yuki simply declares that she is his partner. Elvina is touched by his declaration, agreeing to his plan. She takes a fighting stance, ready to fight alongside her master. Yuki declares it's time to show what all their training was for. Elvina steals her resolve, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice if needed. And so, the tamer and his monster stand together against the boss. But Yuki recalls that his recent level-ups granted him a new skill. He activates it, the Machine Gun Evil Eye. A very subtle name. The skill analyzes the knight, revealing its holy and fire attributes. He realizes Elvina is at a massive disadvantage as the knight lunges forward. With a danger alert flashing, Yuki screams for her to dodge the attack. He pulls Elvina back just as pillars of holy fire erupt from the ground. With his partner safe, he quickly processes the new information. His new skill lets him see a monster's attributes and even its threat level, a power that manifests as a golden light in his eye. Elvina confirms this is a basic tamer ability, an eye for a monster's true nature. But their lesson is cut short, as the knight charges in for another attack. With Yuki watching her back, Elvina can now go on the offensive. She leaps forward to meet the boss head-on. Declaring that she can now focus entirely on the fight, the knight simply stands its ground, ready for her assault. Yuki realizes something crucial about Elvina's last attack. Her punch didn't seem to do any damage at all, but his new skill reveals the truth. The knight is a fire monster. Elvina seems confused, pointing out the obvious. A flaming knight is probably a fire type. But Yuki's vision goes deeper than just appearances. He explains that a small fire spirit is piloting the armor from within. With this new intel, their strategy is set. She tells Yuki to focus on the fight, not on her. The knight prepares to strike once more, and with Yuki calling out its moves, Elvina easily dodges the attack. With Yuki as her eyes, Elvina dances through the storm of holy fire. He calls out every opening, guiding her strikes with pinpoint accuracy. She follows his final command, diving in for a decisive blow to the head. But the knight reacts with impossible speed and unleashes a counterattack that sends Elvina flying back. She notes that it finally felt her attack, but Yuki knows it was just a graze. He pushes his vision harder, knowing they're just one step away, and spots the next deadly attack just in time. He leaps in to save her, as Elvina reminds him to mind his own safety. Our boy can only offer a sheepish apology for his reckless save. Elvina offers him a new option, telling him to use her skill. Yuki is confused, questioning what she means. A system window reveals one of her abilities, Maid of All Wild. She explains that as a tamer, he can channel her power through himself. This particular skill grants a massive temporary stat boost, but it's a one-time use, meaning he has to pick the perfect moment. So, No pressure, she confirms with a confident smile, putting her full trust in him. With their plan set, they agree to end this on the very next attack. But the knight unleashes a blinding flurry of holy strikes. Yuki screams a warning, and Elvina dodges just in time. Yuki calls out another command, telling her to stop. She follows instantly, sliding left to evade the next strike. A pillar of holy fire erupts right where she was standing. But the blast is too wide, and Yuki is caught in the aftermath. He hits the ground hard, injured but still in the fight. Pushing himself up, he tells her to ignore him and focus. With his next command, Elvina leaps away from another deadly blow. Now is the moment. Yuki activates her skill, Maid of All Wild. Elvina dives from above, her entire body glowing with borrowed power. Her attack connects, shattering the knight's defenses completely. The knight slumps forward, its fiery plume finally extinguished. Yuki collapses in relief, whispering that they've finally won. Elvina admits that using her ultimate skill was quite draining, and with a polite bow, she bids her master a formal farewell. Yuki tries to call her back, but his body refuses to move. He realizes the connection is gone, unable to summon her again. Sometime later, he manages to drag himself back through the dungeon. He finally reaches the deepest chamber, where the Demon King is waiting. The king greets him with a calm expression, glad to see him in one piece. But Yuki's first thought is to find Elvina and lecture her about disappearing. The Demon King's voice echoes from a sunlit chamber. He tells Yuki he's lucky he made it back, or he would have missed her farewell. Our boy looks down in shock to find Elvina lying peacefully on a bed of flowers. The king explains this is how they honor their dead, a custom not so different from humans. But Yuki can't accept it, questioning how his partner could be gone. The Demon King reminds him that as an undead, her ultimate skill trades destruction for power. He recalls the skill's one-time use, the true meaning of that limit crashing down on him. He bows his head in grief, realizing she paid for their victory with her life. Yuki cries out that he never asked for such a sacrifice. But the king cuts him off, his gaze intense as he gives Yuki a new purpose. The king insists her life was worth the cause, that she simply did her duty as one of his subjects, and that the ultimate responsibility lies with him as her king. But Yuki refuses to accept that answer. He blames himself for blindly following her plan, for not being the one to fight to the very end. He's once again left feeling utterly powerless. The Demon King offers a solution: to make him stronger. Guess that's one way to handle grief counseling. But Yuki desperately searches for another way, a skill to bring her back. The king shuts him down with a cold dose of reality. A tamer's role is to use monsters, not mourn them. Yuki refuses to accept it, a single tear marking his grief. But a new voice cuts through the tension, chiding the Demon King. A maid named May appears, reminding him of a previous agreement. She points out that their agreement didn't include the human boy. Yuki activates his evil eye, recognizing her as one of the king's executives. His skill reveals her true title and a shocking ability: resurrection. Our boy can hardly process what he's seeing. May offers to explain the conditions with a tempting smile. Looks like HR is finally stepping in. A surge of hope rushes through him as he realizes Elvina can be saved. He asks if her power is truly the miracle he's been searching for. May confirms that Yuki's new skill can see her ultimate ability. But Yuki admits his vision is still limited, only showing him the basics. The Demon King orders May to explain the rest to him. She formally introduces herself as May, the head maid. Her job description includes dungeon maintenance and backup resurrections. Sounds cozy. The term hangs in the air as Yuki processes its meaning. She reminds him of the constant threat adventurers pose to their kind, explaining that her power is the ultimate failsafe, a way to bring back the fallen. Yuki's hope surges, but May quickly reminds him of the fine print. She lays out the first catch. The skill has a ridiculously high mana cost. May explains the cost of resurrection, using Yuki as an example. She reveals the price, mana equivalent to an entire dungeon floor. Yuki realizes his resurrection would cost an S-rank floor's mana. May's glowing eye hints Elvina's cost would shrink the dungeon. Talk about a high price for a maid. Yuki understands Elvina's immense value and the implication for conquest. May confirms, noting another executive opposed this method. Yuki then proposes slowly accumulating unused mana. He believes he could gather enough for one person over time. But May reveals a second condition: no resurrection if mana is fully depleted. Elvina's mana is fading, so they must find more quickly. May reveals her simple solution: have Yuki clear a nice big dungeon for them. And Yuki finally understands the true goal behind their conquest. The gentleman attendant confirms this, but says their current gains are not enough. Yuki wonders just how much mana they could possibly need. Mei admits her suggestion to send him into a high-rank dungeon was not well received. The Demon King explains they won't risk Elvina's only chance on a suicide mission. But Yuki clenches his fist, volunteering to take on the challenge himself. The king, Liber, calls the plan reckless, pointing out Yuki's current weakness. Yuki agrees, admitting he has no strategy, but if it's the only path forward, then he has no other choice but to take it. He reminds Liber that this was the very reason he made the pact. The Demon King agrees, his gaze sharp and calculating. But before he can continue, a drop of blood hits the grass. The gentleman attendant steps forward, offering to train Yuki himself. Yuki recognizes him instantly as one of the demons who fought Saki. Mei chimes in, reminding them this attendant, Vint, always supported the conquest. The Demon King considers the offer and gives a nod of approval. He entrusts Yuki to Vint for the next 7 days. A week of hell, probably. The attendant turns, telling Yuki to follow him, and with renewed hope, our boy eagerly runs to meet his fate. Mei is relieved, trusting in Vint's strength to handle the boy. But Vint was the one who stubbornly opposed using humans, a fact that makes Mei worry he might actually kill the kid, a thought that leaves her looking quite concerned. Meanwhile, Vint activates a magic circle, beginning the training. Yuki steals his resolve, ready for whatever comes next. He's transported to a grand castle under a starry sky. Vint explains this is part of the Demon King's power, a personal floor granted to each of the king's executives. But the need for such vast spaces only proves how costly resurrection is. Yuki asks Vint if this training is just about helping him level up. But Vint explains that for humans, leveling up is just stealing mana. He clarifies that adventurers are parasites, draining the dungeon's life force. And since Yuki is contracted to the Demon King, he can't level up here. Realizing conquest is his only path, he asks how Vint will train him. A sword is suddenly tossed into his hands. He wonders if this is about getting better gear. Vint's aura flares as he explains Yuki has nothing to build upon. No skills, no strength, no knowledge, and absolutely no talent. Yuki is stunned by the brutal honesty of his new mentor. Vint tells him if he wants Elvina back, he must build everything he lacks. And with that, the training begins with a storm of violent strikes. Yuki can barely keep up, realizing thought is a luxury he can't afford. Vint warns that if he can't even manage this, he's too weak to be trusted. He realizes Vint isn't trying to kill him, but that he'll simply abandon him if he fails. Yuki understands the cold logic. His death would be meaningless to their cause. His first test, survive for 3 hours by constantly dancing with death. A very reasonable starting point. And so, the brutal lesson in swordsmanship begins. But Yuki accepts the challenge, vowing to risk it all to bring her back. He pushes his skill to its limits, evolving it into the ruinous evil eye. His vision now reveals Vint's attributes and deadly skills. But the power gap is so immense he can't even read his full stats. He realizes if he can't block, he'll have to predict the safest path. Vint scoffs, unimpressed with Yuki's one and only party trick. The first strike comes down with overwhelming force. A danger alert screams in his vision as he barely dodges. He's forced into a desperate dance, evading a flurry of deadly strikes. But Vint is unimpressed, calling his movements sloppy and inefficient, which is why he'll have to learn the hard way. Vint effortlessly blocks Yuki's desperate counterattack, leaving our boy unable to even buy a moment's time. He's kicked away as Vint scolds his slow decision-making, explaining that hesitation is like politely asking your enemy to kill you. But Yuki refuses to break, his eye searching for the next opening. He forces himself onto the offensive, lunging with all his might. But Vint calmly reminds him that the result will be the same. And with a single devastating slash, he ends the exchange. Blood spatters across the cold stone floor. Vint just watches, his expression as unforgiving as ever. Vint offers a sliver of praise, noting his movement is better. Yuki explains he's not just watching, but seeing the sword's path, a skill that lets him copy a monster's movements for an instant. Vint finally understands, realizing Yuki is actively analyzing him. But he immediately dismisses this progress as not nearly enough. He points out their fundamental differences in build and skill. And Yuki realizes with horror that Vint was holding back this whole time. So much for that confidence boost. The attendant explains his years of experience as he effortlessly blocks another strike. Yuki's body is screaming, his vision flooded with danger markers. He realizes that last move was pure swordsmanship, no mana at all. But Yuki roars back that he'll just have to catch up. Vint is impressed by his unbroken spirit, but decides it's time to see if it's courage or just foolishness. He activates a new skill, his aura turning dark and menacing. Yuki's vision is flooded with danger alerts, blinding him to everything else. He realizes that just knowing he's about to die isn't very helpful. He needs skill data, accepting that death is just part of the training program. He forces his evil eye to ignore the threat warnings, and instead analyze the very nature of the attack itself. Vint prepares to unleash his blood blossom beautiful blade. His eye burns with a golden light, analyzing every last detail, and the world erupts in a storm of crimson and steel. Vint looks down, his expression unreadable. He assesses the broken boy at his feet, a silent hum of consideration, and then Yuki wakes up with a gasp. Vint greets him from across the room as if nothing happened. He closes his book and tells Yuki to follow him. Our boy is still reeling, remembering the full force of that final blow. Vint explains that May patched him up, since he was only mostly dead. But what truly impressed the old demon was that in that final moment, Yuki tried to steal his technique. That reckless resolve made Vint want to see what would happen next. And so, he declares the start of the proper training. He leads Yuki through a massive set of doors, revealing a chamber packed with monsters of every kind. Our boy can only stare, a single drop of sweat on his face. Vint tells him to handle the small army lightly. Sure, no problem. But Yuki just grips his sword, a grim acceptance on his face. He's actually getting used to the idea that dying is normal. Sometime later, Yuki finds himself in a very different situation. He's now serving tea to monsters, questioning his life choices. Vint explains that true mastery means optimizing every single movement. He compares it to a butler's work, where even the slightest tremor is a failure. Yuki must learn to control his body and, more importantly, his unique vision. Our boy realizes this training is meant to evolve his evil eye skill. His first test, use that eye to read the desires of every monster at this party. Yuki accepts the challenge, vowing to start by copying his mentor's perfect form. And so, Vint demonstrates the art of pouring tea with flawless precision. Every movement is deliberate, every action filled with purpose. A perfect display of efficiency and control, and it seems Yuki is a surprisingly quick study. But his first attempt ends with a shattered plate. So much for flawless precision. As he cleans up, he realizes copying Vint's movements is harder than it looks. He understands he can't just mimic his mentor, but must adapt the skills to his own body. On day 2, a new group of monsters greets him. A large, red-skinned demon notes that Vint has taken an interest in the newbie. He assumes this means Yuki must be incredibly strong. Yuki nervously clarifies that he's still a work in progress, an answer the demon takes as an invitation to help with his training. But Yuki is ready, his glowing eye prepared to make up for his physical weakness. He'll watch, learn, and test everything he sees, starting with a punch to the face. By day 4, Yuki's training takes a very different turn. He finds himself serving a shivering, lizard-like monster. His evil eye confirms its status chilled. So he uses his skill to predict its needs and offers a blanket. The creature is immediately smitten by his kindness. He learns that each monster has its own unique movements, and he finally understands Vint's strange methods. By day 6, a new customer arrives, a very hungry bat. Yuki confidently predicts its desire and presents a meal, only to become the main course himself. Guess that's what you call a tip. His skill reveals the bat's ability is bloodsuck, a very literal interpretation of customer service. By day 7, Yuki's movements are flawless. He pours a perfect cup of tea with a steady hand, and proudly presents it for his mentor's approval. Vint's review is harsh, but admits his manners are now passable. After a week of endless battle and butler training, Yuki has survived. He believes he's finally reached the end of his trial. But Vint corrects him as the real test begins now. He unleashes his ultimate skill, the Blood Blossom Beautiful Blade. The very same attack that nearly ended Yuki's life before. Vint notes that Yuki can now use his eye instantly. He warns that if Yuki can't master his skill, he will die. But Yuki already knows the stakes, accepting that failure means death. His evolved eye analyzes Vint's ultimate skill in perfect detail. He can see far more than just a simple danger warning. And now he finally understands how to move his own body. He activates the very same skill he just analyzed, and meets his mentor's attack with a perfect copy. The exchange ends with Yuki's blade at Vint's throat, and for the first time, the old demon is knocked to the floor. But Vint admits his disappointment, realizing he still fell short. Yuki knows this victory means nothing if Elvina isn't saved. He roars that Vint won't be the one to decide his limits, and with a surge of raw determination, he draws upon the spilled blood, reshaping his mentor's ultimate skill into something entirely his own. He declares that one failure won't be enough to stop him, vowing to overwhelm his master with a sheer number of strikes. He sees his opening, the perfect moment to act, and unleashes a final desperate blow with everything he has. Vint can only look on, impressed by his student's growth. Yuki challenges his mentor with a defiant glare. But Vint points out he can't spam his new ultimate move. And with that, our boy admits he's reached his absolute limit. His mentor catches him before he hits the floor. As Yuki collapses, his phone slips from his pocket. Vint helps him away, noting his training is far from over. On the forgotten phone, a message from Saki appears. She's found a dungeon for him, but worries about his safety. She knows a B-rank dungeon is a dangerous place to explore, a place of crackling energy with an unknown boss waiting inside. The Demon King announces their next move from his throne, a B-rank dungeon. He seems pleased, acknowledging that Yuki has finally gained some strength. Vint offers a backhanded compliment, admitting his sword skills are now decent, but the king questions how an E-rank like Yuki can even get inside. Yuki explains he's just tagging along as a porter, a familiar role for him. Mei sees through the ruse, asking who he plans to contract with. He reveals his targets, leaving his demonic allies completely stunned. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, a girl with silver hair calls out his name. She immediately notices the sword at his hip, asking if he's been training. Yuki apologizes for the difficult request, but she just waves it off with a smile. She admits it's a relief to have a familiar face around. But their reunion is cut short by a new boisterous adventurer. He and his party are eager to start the raid, but one of them spots Yuki. Saki clarifies that Yuki isn't part of their group. She explains these guys are just guild volunteers, not personal requests. They're just here to ride her S-rank coattails for an easy promotion. What a great team dynamic. The leader approaches Yuki, assuming he must be at least A rank. But Saki asks him to confirm his rank, and Yuki admits he's only an E. The man's friendly attitude evaporates in an instant. He demands Saki drop the dead weight and take his B-rank party instead. Saki defends him, pointing out he's already solo cleared 2 dungeons. Yuki confirms it, though his memories of those clears are far from heroic. The other adventurers are suspicious, knowing that clearing dungeons is rare for low rankers. The leader fumes, his plan to ride Saki's coattails to A rank now in jeopardy. He complains that Yuki's presence will steal his thunder, but Saki cuts him off, reminding him this is an investigation, not a glory run. With that settled, she announces their target, the Cave of Sealed Desire. And so, the party ventures into the B-rank dungeon. She explains that a dungeon's rank is determined by the power of its boss, a question that makes Yuki wonder how they even know what to expect. Saki explains the 2 basic rules of dungeon ranking. The stronger the boss, the more floors and complexity it has. She confirms this dungeon's 22 floors make it a solid B rank. But the real problem is that the boss is nowhere to be found. A mission so frustrating it got bumped all the way up to her. Their conversation is cut short by a monster attack. The B-rank leader immediately claims the kill for himself. He brings his axe down with a brutal swing, and proudly boasts about his victory to Saki. Saki just sighs, realizing being S-rank is truly exhausting. The B-rank leader dismisses Yuki's achievements entirely, but his arrogant speech is cut short by a sudden tremor, as a massive stone golem appears right behind him. And it's not alone. An entire squad of them has ambushed the party, but Saki and Yuki are already leaping into action. The S-rank hero cuts through the monsters in a blur of light, unleashing her signature skill, the Luminous Slash. The B-rank leader can only stare, admitting he didn't even see it happen. Saki turns to Yuki, telling him she doesn't need his fighting power. But our boy apologizes, admitting he was about to attack too. The stone golem lies shattered on the ground. Saki turns to him, shocked by his perfect timing. Yuki just says the monster looked tough. She can't believe he matched her S-rank movements. His sword training has clearly paid off more than she imagined. She thanks him with a bright smile, praising his good work. Yuki can only marvel at how unpredictable dungeons can be. Saki tells the others to focus on the mission, leaving the fighting to her. The B-rank leader scoffs, vowing to find the boss and prove his worth. But even after 10 long hours of searching, they found no trace of a boss room. Saki stops, considering their next move. She confirms they've checked for hidden paths, but found nothing. But Yuki has a different idea, placing his hand on a solid wall. The B-rank leader immediately mocks his E-rank ignorance. He explains that dungeons are just illusions made of mana, and demonstrates by kicking the wall a very scientific approach, warning that trying to break through will only get him hurt. But with his evil eye glowing, Yuki sees something else entirely. A statement that leaves the arrogant adventurer completely baffled. He reveals the entire cave is made of the same material as the golems. Saki understands instantly, ordering everyone back. She unleashes her signature skill, the Luminous Slash, and blasts a massive hole right through the wall. She immediately orders the party through the new opening. They step through the rubble into an unfamiliar space, and find themselves in a vast, desolate wasteland. Yuki's eyes widen as he takes in the impossible sight. The true boss of this dungeon, a colossal stone titan, looms over them. Guess they found the boss room. The B-rank leader is terrified as Saki realizes the truth. She explains they were inside a massive golem disguised as a dungeon. The B-rank leader can't comprehend the scale of the deception. Saki clarifies it was all a ruse to fake the dungeon's rank. Yuki realizes this must be the true first floor, which means the dungeon's real rank is far higher than they were told. Saki confirms it's undoubtedly an A-rank dungeon, and likely on the verge of becoming an S-rank threat. So, a typical Tuesday for her. She immediately sends out an urgent report to the guild, detailing their findings, a massive A-rank dungeon with a golem decoy. With the truth revealed, they share a look of grim understanding. Saki notes the floating castle, a sign of their enemy's intelligence. The B-rank leader confirms the massive golem is now inert. Saki explains its sole purpose was to stop an S-rank like her, a chilling realization that their foes are capable of complex strategy. The B-rank leader argues monsters are just beasts, but Saki knows better. She explains they have clear intelligence and a strategic mind. And Yuki knows from experience that some even have feelings. The B-rank leader sees this as a lucky break, a chance to strike first. But Saki announces the investigation is over. It's time to clear the dungeon. She orders the others back to the guild through the nearby portal, but Yuki refuses to turn back, declaring he'll stay by her side. Saki is taken aback by his sudden determination. His eyes reflect the very reason he's fighting in the first place. She explains she needs someone to carry information back if she falls, and out of everyone here, she trusts only him with that mission. She grabs him by the collar, her tone turning deadly serious, demanding a promise that this time they're going home together. He agrees, but his gaze holds a much deeper resolve. He remembers the family he lost and the partner he failed, vowing to never let that happen again. Saki just scoops him up and leaps into action. Well, that's one way to travel. Saki carves a path through the desolate landscape. The B-rank leader is left behind, blinded by her speed, but he refuses to go back empty-handed. He spots a glowing mana crystal on the ground. Meanwhile, Saki cuts a direct path toward the castle. They finally arrive at the heart of the dungeon. A voice greets them, surprised any human could make it this far. They find themselves in a throne room of pure crystal, and on that throne sits the true boss of this dungeon. She introduces herself as Karat, the jewel golem, with ambitions to be a demon king. Saki realizes Karat has been hoarding mana this whole time. The golem queen explains she's been using it to perfect her form. She goes on a rant about her own flawless beauty, and with that, she lunges forward to demonstrate her power. But Yuki's evil eye activates, analyzing her skill, Magic Song. She's shocked as he dodges a flurry of attacks that should have ended him. He notes her incredible speed, knowing a single hit would be fatal. But after his training with Vint, she seems almost slow. She scoffs, boasting that her body is harder than any golem. Yuki just tightens his grip, knowing exactly what he has to do. His only job is to create an opening for the real powerhouse. And Saki follows up with a devastating luminous slash. The golem queen is shocked to see a scratch on her perfect form. But Saki knows that unbreakable is just a suggestion. Yuki can only admire the sheer power of her S-rank skill. Karat whines about the pain, her vanity clearly taking the bigger hit. But Saki sees through the act, knowing the golem is planning something. She warns Yuki to stay sharp as they plan their next move. Their strategy is simple. Overwhelm her with a constant barrage. But Karat just smirks, revealing she's been watching them the whole time. She activates a new skill, boasting that she knows their weak spot. Yuki senses a massive surge of mana, but nothing seems to be happening. Saki's eyes widen in horror as she realizes the terrifying truth. Back at the entrance, the B-rank party finds their escape route blocked by reformed golems. So much for a clean getaway. Karat reveals her trap, threatening to crush the other adventurers from afar. Saki understands she was gathering golem material the entire time. She's caught in an impossible choice: save the others or stop the boss. But Yuki steps forward, telling Saki to go and save them. He insists they can't let the golem queen escape their sight, and with a firm grip on his sword, he declares he'll hold her off himself. Saki puts her complete faith in him with a final smile. She dashes off, promising a celebration when they return. Karat scoffs, calling him a worthless sacrifice left to die. But Yuki tightens his grip, declaring this is an act of trust. He recalls everyone who believed in him, from Saki to his demonic allies. And he knows he must answer that faith with everything he has. Karat is stunned, questioning the surge of monster power from a human. Yuki reveals his true nature, declaring he'll fight as a monster tamer. He unleashes the swordsmanship he learned from monsters far stronger than her, The Golem Queen roars in disbelief as his blade finally finds its mark. He explains that his evil eye has already read her every move. Annoyed, Carrot decides to change her technique completely. Her arm morphs into a deadly whip, threatening to coil around him. But Yuki meets her challenge, daring her to even try and reach him. The Golem Queen scoffs at his confidence, lunging in for the kill. But our boy reveals he let her catch him on purpose. Carrot can only stare in shock, realizing she's been played. Yuki declares he's going to use her own hardness against her. She finally understands he's been using her this entire time. And with the sigil on his hand glowing, he reveals the true power of a monster tamer. Carrot is enraged, vowing to make the human pay for the damage. But Yuki knows this fight is far from over. She prepares to unleash a truly devastating skill, compressing and polishing her crystalline body into what she calls her most perfect and powerful form. Yuki just watches, completely unfazed by the dramatic monologue. She reveals other adventurers trapped in crystal, but says he's not worthy of her collection. Instead, she promises to grind him into dust. He's immediately pushed back by the sheer weight of her power. She scoffs, realizing his small body can't handle her true mass. But Yuki just mocks her strategy as uncreative. She argues that bigger jewels are always more valuable, but our boy plants his feet, completely disagreeing. He says what truly matters is how beautifully you cut it. And he activates the very skill he learned from Vint, the Blood Blossom Beautiful Blade. His gaze is sharp, his resolve absolute. Carrot is stunned, questioning how a human can use a monster's power. Yuki simply declares that this is his style now. A storm of crimson blades erupts around the Golem Queen. Her eyes widen, realizing she has nowhere to run. The Golem Queen is torn apart by the storm of crimson blades. But the skill comes at a heavy price, fueled by Yuki's own blood. Carrot can only stare in disbelief at her shattered form. She sacrificed most of her body just to survive the terrifying attack. But she sees that Yuki paid a steep price for his victory as well. He just tells her he's already read her every move. She can see he's at his absolute limit. Guess he's not faking this time. She scoffs, asking what he can do with such a broken body. The blood spreading across his shirt seems to prove her point. But Yuki agrees, admitting that he can't do much, as he prepares to summon backup. He reveals his backup, a surprisingly adorable little bat, the very same one that took a bite out of him during training. Back in the Demon King's domain, his allies watch the battle unfold, and Vint finally understands the boy's reckless strategy. Yuki had planned this from the start, using the bat's blood suck skill to store enough blood for a second decisive attack, a risky gambit since he's already near death and the bat has zero combat power. He explains the first attack, his ultimate skill, was just the setup. Vint realizes that using it would leave Yuki half dead and defenseless, a perfect lure to bait his enemy into a final fatal mistake. Vint realizes Yuki is turning his own weakness into a weapon, and now it's time for the little freeloader to pay him back. He declares this was his true plan all along. He formally introduces himself to the Golem Queen. He is Yuki, a monster tamer who uses anyone and anything to win the fight no matter the cost. Carrot is cleaved in two, calling him a monster. Her crystalline body shatters into pure energy. But Yuki reaffirms that he is still human, despite his demonic pact. And as the dungeon's mana floods the chamber, his eyes begin to burn. He knows this much, mana should be enough. He channels the dungeon's raw power into his sigil, trusting Lieber to use it to bring Elvina back. Just as Saki arrives, catching him before he collapses. She can't believe he defeated the A-rank boss all by himself. Our boy can only ask for a hand, weakened from the fight. News of their victory spreads like wildfire, attracting a horde of reporters. And the Adventurers Guild calls a press conference to address the situation. A guild official explains that something unusual happened in the dungeon, and that the person responsible will explain it all themselves. The press is in a frenzy, knowing this story is huge, and the one who contributed most to the clear is about to be revealed to the world. The guild introduces S-rank adventurer Lady Saki. The crowd erupts with questions for the White Flash. They demand to know if an intelligent monster was involved. Saki calmly asks for silence, ready to begin her report, but she's internally cursing Yuki for leaving her to do the talking. A flashback reveals he pushed the duty onto her, claiming he had something important to do. And with that, he was gone, leaving her to face the press alone. She wonders what could possibly be more important than this. Meanwhile, Yuki rushes to Vint, desperate to know if it worked. Mei announces he's just in time for the grand finale. Vint warns him to look away, as the raw power is too much for human eyes. But Yuki can already feel the overwhelming pressure. Mei holds a glowing lock, declaring that Elvina's rest is over. The head maid will not permit her to loiter in the underworld. Guess the afterlife has strict loitering laws. She activates her ultimate skill, Underworld Approval. And with a flash of light, Elvina's eyes snap open. Yuki rushes to her side, overjoyed to see his partner alive. Elvina is confused, asking why her master is here with her. He jokes that she shouldn't follow him into death so quickly. She realizes Mei's resurrection worked, relieved her sacrifice wasn't in vain. Yuki clenches his fist, overcome with emotion.
He can only say that he's glad she's okay.
She questions if he's making another one of his undead jokes, but Vint cuts the reunion short, announcing they have work to do. Yuki dreads another round of butler training, much to Elvina's confusion, but Vint and Mei just present them with new formal attire, and soon Yuki is looking sharp in his brand new suit. Yuki questions the fancy new suit he's been given, as Vint tells him he's playing the king for a day. He's led into a hall filled with grateful monsters. Our boy is completely baffled by the sudden celebration. The Demon King, Lieber, greets him from across the room. Mei explains the mana he gathered allowed for extra resurrections. It seems the entire crowd was brought back thanks to his efforts. The monsters are a little too eager to hear his story, but Elvina pulls him away, declaring she has priority. Yuki calls out to Lieber for help, who just enjoys the show. Lieber explains that Yuki's choice saved them all. He tells Yuki to get used to accepting their gratitude, but Yuki denies it, saying he didn't do it for them. He only did it because Elvina reminded him of someone else. His mind flashes back to the family he lost, a painful memory of the home he can never return to. He clenches his fist, his resolve hardening, but he admits with a small smile that he's glad they were saved. The party is interrupted by a werewolf getting a little too friendly with Elvina. Vint is already back to lecturing as Lieber notes he's grown fond of the kid. Guess that's demon for I love you. Mei points out Vint's uncharacteristic kindness. She then turns the question to Lieber himself. The king admits they thought they were using Yuki, but the boy flipped the script on them completely. And in doing so, he achieved far more than they ever expected. Lieber just smiles, acknowledging that's the kind of man Yuki is. A man who continues to defy all expectations. Back at the press conference, Saki is completely thrown off. A mysterious man in the crowd demands they bring out the real hero. Saki's eyes narrow, realizing this isn't a simple question. He declares he knows she's hiding a monster, and he's here to claim him. The mysterious man corners the B-rank leader in a dark alley. The adventurer explains the person he's looking for was with Saki. The hooded man scoffs, annoyed by the abundance of low rankers. But the adventurer suddenly remembers the name Yuki. The man recalls the file, a low-rank boy who was with the party. The B-rank leader pleads to be let go, thinking he's now safe. But his interrogator has other plans, wreathed in a sudden burst of flame. He tells the man to blame his own loose mouth for what comes next. And with that, the alley is engulfed in a fiery blaze. Meanwhile, Yuki walks through a park, holding a small bouquet. He reflects on being surrounded by humans again, deciding to take a day off from his demonic allies. He clutches a bouquet, ready to visit old friends. His destination is the Great Collapse Memorial, a monument to those who died in the disaster, the very same one that destroyed his orphanage. He smiles, ready to tell them all about his journey, but his quiet reflection is suddenly cut short. He senses a presence, mistaking it for Saki. But it's the hooded man, an A-rank adventurer named Zapper. Yuki confirms they've never met before, but Zapper announces he's here to scout him, leaving our boy completely stunned. He knows all about the fake dungeon incident, and with a menacing glare, he tells Yuki there's no need to hide. He reveals he knows Yuki let Saki take the credit to hide his monstrous power. He even knows Yuki begged to join the raid for a simple rank-up exam. Yuki tries to play it off, claiming he only helped with the evacuation. But Zapper cuts him off, stating that Yuki was the one who took down the boss. He claims our boy handled the main threat while Saki was just a decoy, a conclusion that leaves Yuki sweating, realizing this man's intel is terrifyingly accurate. Yuki tries to brush it off, but Zapper tells him to just listen. He explains that dungeon conquering is a business, not a game for pawns. To make real money, you need the best weapons, and he believes that weapon is Yuki. He points out the obvious limits of solo adventuring, but joining a party opens up new possibilities, a chance to earn far more than he could alone, and with a predatory grin, he offers Yuki a partnership. Guess this is his version of a job interview. Yuki acknowledges the offer with a calm expression, but politely declines, explaining his goals are different. Zapper just shrugs, admitting his words aren't very persuasive. He says he was planning to test Yuki's strength regardless, so he decides to stick with a more direct approach. Violence. Our boy is stunned by the sudden aggression and unleashes a massive hammer of pure flame. The bouquet he was holding is instantly engulfed in fire. Yuki can't believe he'd use magic in a civilian area. Zapper is impressed, his desire to recruit Yuki only growing. Yuki shouts that this is a sacred place for the dead, but Zapper just smirks, knowing full well that it's illegal. Zapper declares that turning him down is an even bigger sin, and instantly traps Yuki in a powerful binding spell. He points out his weakness. He's a monster hunter, not a brawler. He grabs Yuki's face, preparing another attack, and unleashes a blast of ice, freezing him in place. He explains that Yuki is built for dungeons, the opposite of him, which is exactly why he's so determined to have him. He threatens to follow Yuki into every dungeon and ruin his plans, a very mature way to handle rejection. He reveals his title, the Skill Killer, boasting that no adventurer can stop him. Pinned and powerless, Yuki is left with an impossible choice. Zapper walks away, leaving Yuki with a final, chilling ultimatum. Back in his domain, the Demon King moves a chess piece. Angered by the attempt to steal what belongs to him, Mei tends to Yuki's wounds as he plans a counterattack. He explains he was unarmed on his day off, a victim of low-rank profiling. But he admits even with a sword, he needs a way to counter Zapper's magic. The Demon King reminds him of his true calling as a monster tamer. His solution is simple. Find a monster that specializes in magic. And just like that, a new elf named Manhwa is summoned. Lieber explains that she is their resident expert on all things magical. Lieber tells Yuki he must learn the Abyss, but Manhwa seems less than thrilled to be his teacher. She complains about Vint, questioning why his top disciple needs her help. Yuki realizes he's never actually seen her at any of Vint's gatherings. She scoffs at the idea, ranting that Vint called her an old tryhard. She clarifies she's only around 1,000 years old, give or take, or more specifically 1499, a technicality that leaves Yuki completely speechless. But she sees an opportunity in this, a chance to one-up her rival. If she makes Yuki stronger than Vint ever could, the old demon would be furious. Her petty revenge fantasy gets a little weird, so Yuki just cuts to the chase. She agrees, admitting her own research could use a little excitement. Yuki is brought to a massive library, asking if he has to read everything. Mashina confirms that this is just the beginning of her collection. She teases him about his lack of knowledge, which he tries to deny. So she gives him a pop quiz. What's the difference between magic and a skill? A question that leaves our boy completely lost for words. She explains that skills are personal, while magic is a universal technique. She then breaks down the 3 main categories of skills. First are the abilities granted by a person's job class. Second are the innate skills that are unique to each race. And finally, there are skills born from elevating a mastered technique. She explains that these skills are just cheat techniques, and that copying them is often impossible due to fundamental differences. She asks if he's felt that gap for himself. His mind flashes back to his fight with Vint, where he copied the demon's ultimate skill. Yuki confirms he learned that lesson the hard way, asking if magic is the opposite. She explains that magic is consistent, producing the same result for anyone. It is a universal and absolute rule. With a glow of power, she declares that this is magic. Yuki is excited by the possibilities, but has another question. Manhwa poses the next riddle. If magic is universal, why can't everyone use it? Yuki guesses the conditions must be strict, maybe a huge mana cost. But Manhwa just sighs, saying it's simply too difficult. He asks if it's hard to control the mana, but she clarifies it's the chanting. She explains that proper magic requires a novel's worth of chanting for a single spell. Yuki recalls Zapper's instant binding spell, a far cry from a long recitation. He points out that adventurers he's seen just shout a single word. So Manhwa poses her next question. How are they actually doing it? Yuki thinks for a moment, putting the pieces together. He realizes they must be compensating for the long chant somehow. She smiles, confirming he's right, and explains they use tools like a staff to do the work for them. She explains the various shortcuts, like magic circles or abbreviated chants. She calls these cheats, ways to bend the rigid rules of magic. To demonstrate, she calls forth a massive fire hammer with a single command. She explains this is no chant casting, a mental shortcut for the spell. But the power of the spell depends entirely on the caster's understanding. It's all about how they visualize the spell in their mind. Is it text, sound, or image? This explains why the same spell can have wildly different results. Once he understands this, he can forge magic into his own unique style. She demonstrates again, shaping the very fabric of the spell itself. Yuki watches in awe, realizing the true depth of what he's learning. She explains another shortcut, using a partial chant and filling the rest with raw power. Yuki is thrilled, thinking all he has to do is memorize the words. But she warns him that rote memorization is the path of a novice. To truly master magic, he must understand every line of the chant. Our boy realizes it's like learning a new language, And he's not exactly a star student. She reminds him that as a human, his time is limited, so he should be grateful for her guidance. And with that, she unleashes a spell of incredible scale and complexity. Yuki can only watch, a single drop of sweat betraying his awe. He's suddenly transported to a world of roaring flames. Mashina explains this is her power, a spell that brings the contents of a book to life. She calls this a virtual dungeon, a way to learn by doing. Yuki just grips his sword, a familiar challenge before him. He declares that clearing dungeons is his specialty. But a single drop of sweat tells a slightly different story. His first task, to read every basic magical element and its variations. He looks up at the endless sea of challenges before him. Mashina just smiles, daring him to say it's impossible. And with that, the first fiery monster lunges forward. But Yuki just smirks, refusing to back down from the fight. He meets the challenge head-on, unleashing a flurry of icy strikes. Mashina watches on, completely stunned by his progress. And Yuki declares he'll end this in an instant.